Okay, can I ask everyone to take a seat, to calm down, but not to fall asleep? And I think we get started. We are aware we are early in the morning and there might be some traffic, hopefully. So be helpful to people who look for a seat later, please. And with this, good morning. Welcome to our traditional Saturday morning conference. I'm Susanne Nikolchev from the European Audiovisual Observatory. I will not talk to you about the European Audiovisual Observatory, so I hope you know that we are there to help you, the industry, with information. And I do hope that you are interested enough to go out of this room afterwards, and right to the right side is our stand, H1, where you get all the information that I won't give you now, and also where you can get the focus and other free publication which I believe are helpful. And with this, let's just get started. Why did we choose the topic that we have? We were thinking that we should look into the roots, into why Cannes exists. Why is it? Well, without theatrical exploitation in Europe, we wouldn't have this Cannes film market, that's for sure. So it is, even if the world has changed, it's still super important, not only for revenue, but also as platform for a diverse film offer. And still, we have to recognize that times have changed a lot. We went through COVID. COVID is luckily behind us. But we also see lots of changes with the platforms, the whole new world that is now well established and in competition. We have seen how consumers change habits and have to see how to adapt. We have seen how costs have developed and are also not as they used to be. So it's time to take stock of that and to wonder, where do we actually stand? What might change? What could change? We should understand the challenges and the opportunities that distribution and the exhibition system can offer. So if we go out of here today and we understand a little bit more of those challenges and opportunities, then we as Observatory have achieved our goal. We look at that in our traditional way, as the Observatory is composed from a market angle and from a legal angle, because we think those two sides go together, and this is then also reflected in the structure of the conference. So you will have two different rounds where we look and focus once really on the economic side and then on the legal framework and the policy issues in the second round. And each of these rounds will be introduced by colleagues from the Observatory with some facts and figures, so to get you right into the context in which then our panel will have the discussion. And that makes me turn to our panel, which now I have to see that's fairly easy. To my left, we have Christoph Papusek, the CFO of the Austrian-based multiplex company Cineplex. Next to him, we have, that's Katharina Newman. Sorry, but some of you meet people in your life before, you meet them on the internet, you meet them in real life, and you say, what picture goes with what person? Now, this picture of Katharina Newman, director of film distribution in Nordisk Film, and then we have someone with a different hair color. Thank you for that. Anastasia Piazzotta, founder and CEO of Wanted Cinema. Next to her is our panelist from Poland, from the CEO of the Art House Cinemas Association of Poland, Malena Gabryszewska. Next to her, a well-known face, Lucia Recalde, the Deputy Director and Head of the Unit of the Audiovisual Industry and Media Support Programs from DG CNECT, Lucia Recalde. And then last but not least, we also have the Netherlands Film Fund with Sandra Den Hammer. And then they are so nicely framed by the two gentlemen that we have. The one on the right side is my dear colleague Gilles Fontaine, who heads the Department for Market Information and who will moderate the first panel. And as I said, the way we start the whole show is by introducing you a little bit into the economic side of our topic, and that will be done by Martin Kanzler, who is the deputy of the head of the Department for Market Information. Enjoy the show, and Martin.
Good morning, everyone. You're in for about 11 minutes of delightful statistics. To give you a bit of factual background for the first panel discussion on the market developments. Arguably, exhibitors were hit the hardest by the collapse of box office, as that is, for most of them, their exclusive revenue. So one could have assumed that some exhibitors will not make it through the pandemic. And our figures show that, at least in terms of the absolute screen base in Europe, this has not happened at all. European screens are there, and they have always been there, also throughout the pandemic, largely thanks to public support. Of course, there are significant differences among markets in terms, for instance, in terms of screen density. Some markets are very mature, most Western European markets are, but there is still a smaller, I can see a frustrated face. All the slides will be made available afterwards. So there are also smaller markets with a comparatively low screen density where actually building more cinemas and screens can still be a potentially relevant growth driver. But there are also differences in the structure. Some markets are dominated by more multiplex cinemas, whereas a lot of European countries have a lot of small and even monoscreen cinemas, as you can see by the screens per site. This also goes to show that whenever we talk about Europe, keep in mind, please, that Europe is not Europe. Europe is very heterogeneous. The situation in an individual market can be quite different from another one, and they can also be different from the average and aggregate figures that we do share with you for Europe. Now, the screens are there. What about the distributors? This is a figure that we have never worked with before, so I'm not entirely confident about the absolute figure. That is, we have identified in our Lumiere database the distributors that released films over the past 10 years. What I am confident with is the trend, namely to show you that the distributors are still there. The number of distributors has remained stable. It's just marginally below what we've seen before the pandemic, and it also shows there's a large number of distributors active, a lot of them very small distributors. Of course, again, the situation is very different from one market to the other, and linked particularly to the market size. In a large market like Germany, with about almost 600 film releases per year, we have identified around 170 distributors, whereas in a typical mid-sized market like Norway with about 10 million admissions, you have 250 releases and less than 50 distributors. And in small markets like Iceland, you have 150 film releases and only 4 distributors. But one thing that seems to be shared among markets is the fact that the vast majority of admissions is being taken by 4 or 5 leading distributors, and a large number of smaller distributors are sharing the remaining 20 to 30% of admissions. So, distributors are there, screens are there. What about the films? Actually, last year we have seen and the last 2 years was the highest number of film releases ever recorded after the pandemic. So the releases are there and are actually growing. However, there are still slightly less US films than there used to be before the pandemic. So it's particularly the number of European films releases and from films from other parts of the world. But having said that, in 23 the number of US releases also grew back significantly, climbing back to what it used to be. What does all of that mean for the box office? In 23, European admissions climbed back to about 80% of their pre-pandemic average. Ticket prices increased in most countries, albeit normally I'm sorry if this is, albeit below the inflation rate, but nevertheless leading box office to grow higher and reaching about 90% of the pre-pandemic average. A question that we are asking ourselves is whether this is a kind of a new normal or just another step to a full recovery. There are 3 arguments that can be made for the hypothesis that this might be the level we will see in the short to mid-term. The first one is purely an observation that, at least in the mature markets, the recovery rates seem to be converging. When you look at markets that had a very high recovery rate, like Czechia and Denmark already in 22, they basically stagnated in 23. Other markets like Germany, France, which had an average recovery rate in 22, continued to grow and reached or actually exceeded slightly the recovery rates of the other markets. And those markets that had a very low recovery rate in 22, like particularly Italy and Spain, they had the highest growth rates in 23. So but they all seem to be converging around 80% plus minus 10%. And you could also see that those films that had a above 75 recovery rate in 22 only grew 2% on average, whereas the ones with a lower grew by 21%. So the bandwidth is also decreasing over the years, and it looks like at least from a technical point of view, like the recovery rates are converging. Another argument could be that there are potentially a lower appetite for franchise films. And it is franchise films that do drive overall box office growth. We looked at the average admissions of the top 30 films, which largely are constituted by franchise films, and you can compare those with the average admissions of the non-franchise films in the top 30, and you can see 2 things. For one, there is a reason why there are so many franchise films. They do perform significantly better. But you can also see that in 23, the average admissions to franchise films, particularly superhero franchise films, dropped significantly. So this could be a one-off year, but if we have seen, like Barbie and Oppenheimer, unusual success for original content for Europe. But if that would be the case, then this would also have implications on the overall box office growth, because as I said, it's those films that do drive the overall volume. And the third is observational again. It's the Q1 figures. We've collected Q1 figures for 15 markets, and you can see that for 1/3 there was a slight increase, but it's largely those markets that had a comparatively low recovery rate, and the majority, 2/3 of the markets for which we had data, actually declined in 24 compared to 23. Of course, 24 can be a particularly challenging year also because of the impacts from the US strike actions last year. We will have the Olympics coming up, the European Football Championships, but in looking a bit more long-term, there can be also arguments be made that some of the consumer changes will last even longer that have happened during the pandemic. You have more political instability, and you have extreme weather like heat waves, floodings, etc., which might have a negative impact on overall cinema growth. So, just a question and hypothesis that we wanted to share with you, and perhaps the panel wants to address as well. I would also like to show you something completely new that we've done, and that is a more detailed analysis of the composition of the box office markets in Europe by film types. By film types, we mean blockbusters, high-grossing films, mid-tier films, and low-grossing films, but defined for each individual market. And linked then to the region of origin. There is a report with lots of different insights from this. I'll just share two of them with you today. One, US blockbusters and US high-grossing films cumulatively account for 50% of the box office, so they do drive the box office, a very, very small number of films. A bit surprising for us was the fact that we found among the European films, it's actually European films falling into the low-grossing category that cumulatively accounted for the largest share of European admissions, namely 11%. Of course, it's a large number, accounting for 65% of the total films on offer. But these are the facts. There are the interpretation of these facts can go two ways. You can say that shows how important the large diversity of European films is, also for the box office. You could also argue it takes too many films to just generate 11%, so that's a bit in the eye of the beholder how to interpret the figures. What we take away for this and for the panel is that what really matters is there's a need for a diverse mix of films that is essential for a healthy box office. The last point I'd like to share with you is concentration. We've observed that in the past 2 years, box office concentration was significantly higher than in the years before. We all know the film offering is highly diverse in Europe. In 23 alone, we have identified at least almost 15,000 films that were on release in European cinemas, but it was only 144 films which accounted for 80% of the total admissions. And that is the lowest number in the last 10 years. So, and the other aspect, and that's very telling or evident, this concentration happens only on the top 10 films. In the past, before the pandemic, in the long-term average, the top 10 films accounted for 24%, 1/4 of admissions, whereas in 22 and 23 it was 34 and 31%. And when you look at the share among the different brackets, you see that it is only the concentration among the top 10 and not among the top 50 or the top 100 films. So, to wrap up, cinema is back. It remains key, but possibly at a lower level and with a higher concentration. Keeping in mind, the situation can look very different in individual countries. And a lot of the figures that you've seen here, you will find in our publication that you can take away. And with this, I'd like to hand over for the first panel discussion to Gilles.
Thank you, Martin. We'll come back to some of these figures later on. On this first station, we'll try to tackle what is the current situation of cinema exhibition and distribution and look for possible development in the near future. And I would like to start with a kind of a scene-setting question to both Christophe and Katharina about the competitive landscape. Much has been said, in particular during the pandemic, about the alleged competition between SVOD services and cinemas. I would like to understand if this is accurate, or in other terms, do cinema going compete really with SVOD, or rather with going to the restaurant? So, Christophe, would you like to start?
So, first of all, good morning, and thank you for having us here. Well, certainly, cinemas and movie-going competes with many things. And during the pandemic, we just had no chance to fight back because everything in the lockdowns was closed, and you had no chance to go out for dinner, you had no chance to go to the fitness club, to meet friends, nothing. So what else you could do than watching movies on streaming platforms? So this was the best advertising potential for these platforms. And the year 21 was an open, close situation, and people didn't feel secure to go out. 22 was still a year with a lot of impact in many markets, especially in the first quarter. We still had restrictions in seating, we had closed concessions, we had earlier closing times, and so on. So why should I go to a place to spend my spare time where things are under regulation, under observation, and so on? So this took maybe longer for cinemas because it's an in-house, it's certainly out-of-home entertainment or culture, but it's in-house, and it took more time. And so the way back might take longer. And parallel to this, we had certainly interruptions in the producing. You are all aware of that. And this caused the situation why the ramp-up period takes longer. And unfortunately, in the year 23, we were, I think, on a very good track. And until September, we were, not only in terms of box office, in many markets, also in terms of sold tickets, equal with the pre-pandemic year 2019, which was not a bad year and not a year without streaming. And then we had the strike and the impacts of pushing back the releases, and the Q4 was certainly not a good one. But at the end, 23 was showing a strong comeback of cinemas.
Thank you. Katharina, where is the competition when you are releasing a movie?
Well, first, thank you for having me in the panel. Deeply honored to be in amongst such experts here. Yeah, of course, as a distributor, we see that the first task is to get the butt off the seat and out of the house. And then we start to compete with the other ways of consumer to using the free time. And we at the Nordisk Film, we have for years already done consumer research and trying to get the temperature where our consumers are going. And after pandemic, we could see actually from the research that there's a drop in frequent cinema going, and there's an increase in non-cinema going. And when we asked people why they are going less to the cinema, there were three main reasons. And one was, I more often choose actually to stay home and watch series and films on my home sofa. And actually, we could see that 52% of the people, they said that they more often choose to actually wait that the film comes on the streamer. Number two was that I have less money. And of course, that is something that we all know, that with the inflation and raising costs, people are getting more conscious where they use their money. And we could see from the study that 50% of the people, they said that they are more critical which film they are going to see in cinema and which they can wait until it comes to a streamer. And number three was that I'm simply out of the habit. And of course, that was something that we already during the pandemic, we kind of anticipated, and we were really worried about that once you don't regularly go to the cinema, very easily just you forgot to do that. And I know that in many markets we have actually created incentives to get people back to the cinema. But on the positive side, I was just looking at the Euromonitor study, who does the consumer studies, that the mega trends amongst the European consumers, and you could see that in 23 people were saying that I'm really eager to get back to the real life events. And also from our own consumption studies, we can see that people say that actually nowadays cinema as a social event is as important as seeing the film on the big screen. And for the younger audiences, it is the most important factor. So if we have that on place in our cinema offering, in a cinema near you, that we cater also that need, I think we are getting in a good shape.
Thank you. That links nicely to what I would call cinema infrastructure, or to the density of of screen. And Marlena, would like to ask you, you've seen the figure which was presented by Martin a few minutes ago, which shows that there has been some stability in the number of screens available in Europe. I wonder, is there a kind of ceiling? Does it mean that the level of offer is now satisfying, or is there room for development or need for development in the number of cinemas and the number of screens? What's your take on that?
First of all, thank you for having me here, and thank you for your amazing job. Your report is really important and amazing and really helpful for our industry. And coming back to your question, I can say from the Polish perspective, but also from the perspective of the CICA, which is International Art House Cinemas Association, and I can say that number of the cinemas is growing as well. So this is good, and the situation is getting better in the cinema, but the landscape of the cinema is changing. It's obvious. We have to do more, but it doesn't mean that we have to do something else that we did before the pandemic. We right now we have to invite our audience to not only to watch the film, but we have to give them some kind of experience. And for that, we need to create safe space for our audience, and it's the best situation right now for the art house cinemas because they are smaller than multiplexes. They have smaller rooms, and the creating of the safe space when we can watch the film and after that talk about this film and so on, it's good. And I can say that in the last year in Poland, we opened 4 more art house cinemas, and the next one we will open in the next Saturday, which is great because we need more smaller cinemas, I think, because our experience of watching films in the cinema is totally different than 4 years ago. So right now we are living in the event cinema space. I mean the huge event for in the multiplexes. I mean the watching Dune on the big screen with the great sounds is really important. But also we have a lot of small films like Bird of Arnold or different films which need to watch and to talk about those films. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I have heard event experience already twice. I think we will come back to that later. Same question to you, Christophe. Do you expect the number of cinemas or screens to grow in the next year, or is the line that we have seen in Martin's presentation a kind of ceiling?
It depends on the markets. There are several countries where there's still room for growing the number of screens, and other markets are quite mature. And here is the challenge to have attractive cinemas, to create safe spaces, as you said. There shouldn't be any entrance barriers. It's people's spare time. They come, they want to entertain themselves, they want to have critical discussion on more diverse movies, whatever. But it has to be very open, inviting, and information has to be good. And when exhibitors fulfill all these requests for their audiences, then the audiences are coming. So it's a lot of quality in terms of projection, in terms of comfort, in terms of accessibility, and then people will come, and certainly information. And here is the link between exhibition and distribution. This cooperation, we all sit in the same boat, is so important, and we need joint campaigns, not only in the big cities, also in the smaller cities and in the countryside. It's easy to create campaigns in capital commercial cities, but it's difficult to be active and to create campaigns in small cities. And here the cooperation is so important between exhibitors and distributors to promote the movies and the movie going, because both needs to be promoted.
Thanks. That links to a question for you, Anastasia. I understand that sometimes it's complicated to organize joint distribution campaigns because there is a kind of lack of predictability on whether the films will be still available on the cities in the next weeks. So my question is it complicated to get access to the screen and to get visibility on that?
Hi, thanks also to be here. Yes, I would say so, especially for independent distributor, art house distributor as we are. It's definitely very complicated because we never know. I don't know how it worked in the rest of the world, but in Italy, for example, you have really to wait till the very last minute to know if your movie is going to be programmed or not. So, because of the Italian system, we also have the so-called local agencies, which are an intermediate between us as distributors and the cinemas, and we sometimes really know, so only last minute, how many screens our cinema will have, meaning Monday with the release on Thursday. And you can imagine in this situation how is it difficult to promote and to work together with the exhibitors. So I think, as you think, that one of the most important is try to combine the efforts to create a programming, a big long-term programming, and not last minute programming. Otherwise there's no chance to be able to be effective in the promotion. We need some time to create the buzz, and we should work together, distributors and exhibitors, much more, in my opinion.
Thank you. A question to you, Sandra. I have probably the naive approach to see two different worlds, the world of commercial cinema on one hand, of art house films on the cinema on the other hand. View from a Netherlands perspective and the situation on your market, is there really such a large difference between the two circuits?
Well, I think there is a difference. Sorry, but there's also, of course, the gray zone where films are playing in both, in the art houses or the commercial cinemas. But I think that the biggest difference between profit-making and private complexes or cinemas against the mostly subsidized art houses is also that they have different functions. So an art house subsidized either by local or national government has functions in film literacy, film education, organizing debates, being close to their local audiences and schools and communities. I think that's a very important function. So I think on the part of I'm here as the head of the Netherlands Film Fund, but also as an AFAT member and as a cinephile. I think theatrical exhibition is really key to our industry and to cinema. And also sitting next to Lucia, I want to say that media has been really a success story in supporting theatrical distribution and exhibition. And I think we should keep on doing that, because that is really where it's the first screen and the biggest screen where we show, and where it's indeed about shared experiences, about togetherness. And we should support together the European distribution of European films, our culture, our identity. So I want to plea to support Lucia to keep on doing that important work as we all do that on our national levels. Yeah.
Okay, well, that links to the question I had in mind for you, Lucia, perfectly, not on the future of media, but on rather what you have been observing over the last year on the implementation of the media distribution schemes. What did you see as changing in the distribution market strategy? How did things change over time in distribution?
Well, first of all, good morning and thanks for having invited me today. Well, a few words. I'm sure that many of you know Creative Europe and the media program, but I would like to stress how important indeed media is for the distribution sector and for the exhibition as well, through the support to Europa cinemas. Just one figure, approximately media supports 330, 350 films distribution per year. So that means a structural support to films and the distribution sector. We do it through automatic support and also through what a kind of selective support that we call films on the move together with sales agents. So an important element that I would like to stress is something that Martin said, is the diversity. When we see, I will concur with you that in the distribution field we have big companies, we have a lot of small companies, we have certain concentration, we have different situations across member states, and from our European perspective, one of the challenges how to be sure that we make something harmonious out of this huge diversity, that we are able to support all these different territories, because according to our data, there are cinemas deserts in some parts of Europe. Cinema density is 40 times, 40, bigger in some territories than in others. So having a kind of common policy support with so big differences is certainly a challenge for us. I would like also to say a word quickly about Films on the Move, because we are really extremely satisfied with this collaboration between the sales agents and the distributors that goes beyond the funding itself. And it has really helped to create a structured dialogue, a conversation. I wanted simply to mention one example of the sales agents of Triangle of Sadness, that because Ruben Auslund has been supported throughout his career through the media program, and he said that media distribution has really helped to develop the career and establish the relationship with the distributors. The film got more than 4 million admissions. The European distributors and sales agents coordinated their career with the American ones. The distributors were able to see the film before the premiere here. And then they decided that maybe that was a good film for young audiences, and they targeted the campaign to those audiences. And for me, this is clear, a good example of how media can have this structuring effect in the relations, not only with the distributor itself, but between sales agents, distributors, and exhibitors.
Thank you. We have already been talking about diversity. You just mentioned it again, and you've seen the cumulative role of this diversity in offer in the result of European film. But let's go a little bit more into details. And Katharina, when you look at the lineup of films which are being distributed, which are competing, what's your takeaway? Is there too much variety, not enough variety? Are some kinds of film missing?
Well, looking at the sheer number of titles distributed in Europe, I think we are good. there are enough titles. Thank you for the excellent presentation before this. But looking also at the concentration of the biggest titles, for the health of the whole infrastructure of our food chain, I think it's really important that we have big audience films. And of course, coming from the territory where the local films are very important, in Nordics, we have had very high shares of local films in all the countries. I'm a big voucher for the big audience local films, because you could see actually even during the pandemic, when we were having hiccups because of the postponed international titles, Nordics were faring considerably well because of the local fare coming into cinemas and supporting the cinemas, and especially now in post-strike environment when we are having some hiccups with the lineup, it is actually the local films that are able to patch the lineup, so we are getting more balanced supply of audience films. And like looking at the numbers from this morning, in Finland, where I come from, our recovery rate was last year 85%. This year, actually, we're growing the market, and it was because of the local films. We had very big local films that were supporting the market. But of course, then if we look at the demographics, one trend that we are very familiar with is that Europe is getting older. And of course, that will probably put some demand on the supply, what kind of films the mature audiences want to see, also, you know, where they want to see them. So that is an opportunity. One maybe little bit worrying factor is that in our studies we can see that the frequent cinema going is dropping, but it is dropping especially in 15 to 24 years old. So Generation G problem, which had been talked about it. We really need to, for the future of our industry, we really need to make films that are relevant to the younger audiences as well. If the younger audiences don't see the relevance in cinema going, we are not probably growing even the talent to tell those stories through our medium. So that is extremely important, of course. And as we distributors say, get them young. So family films, very important, local family films, get the as young as possible into the habit of going in the cinema. So that is very important as well.
Thank you, Anastasia. From your side, what kind of relevant characteristic do you see in the audience today? Which audience are missing, maybe, or which one could be attracted to cinemas?
So actually, we are really studying every day the audience. I mean, it's changing so fast. I mean, there are some data that we are collecting. I'm also studying now myself. For example, we got this very interesting report from the Italian Ministry of Culture that is interesting because they said which are, for example, the most attractive initiative linked to cinemas that considering the age, the different age of the audience that are more interesting for them. For example, the outdoor screenings are number one, and for the Gen Z. Especially, but also for the millennials. So there are strange, and there's also, for example, all the monographic reviews linked to specific authors are something interesting for the baby boomers. So we keep trying to figure out who's this audience, how to attract them. And also thanks to the work of media, because we got with the chance of the Films on the Move and also being part of Europa distribution, we share these ideas, we share with other European distributors how to attract and who are the audience continuously. I think, as my colleague here, that our focus should be on the young audience, and so we should try also to develop all these new marketing strategies that are there, ready to be used. We don't have to be afraid of them, meaning all the marketing tools with artificial intelligence, and keeping studying, getting to know better using data who's our audience and how to attract them, as we already do, but also thanks with these opportunities to invest on tests, on experiments, on organizing workshops also with the Europa distribution to go deeper into the new world.
Thank you. Touching both on audiences and variety of film. Sandra, I have read in a report that you commissioned, I guess it was last year, that in the Netherlands, the dichotomy between commercial films and art house films is particularly high. I wanted to know if you share this view, and what does it mean exactly, and what does it imply?
Yeah, we commissioned this report. It was done by Jonathan Olsberg. We commissioned the report especially to investigate how the Dutch films are doing on an international level, because we usually say that Dutch films are good at the Dutch box office, but not good at the international festivals. By the way, this year we have a strong Dutch presence in many co-productions, I have to say as well. But indeed it shows that we do have blockbusters that do very well at the home box office, which is very good for cinema attendance. And we have films that are internationally praised and selected for festivals, but do quite bad at the home box office. So, and in a way this report was also for us a wake-up call, also to talk with the community and the industry. And it led to some new choices in our priorities for policy. Well, first of all, is that we have to think of our audience in a very early stage of filmmaking. It sounds like a stupid thing to say, but so we work now with audience designers, audience development coaches, to work with filmmakers and to look at for who do you want to make this film, why, and why now. So that's an important question, and I think in the end we are not striving for either blockbusters or art house cinema. I think an excellent film should have both. So we want both. We want the quality and the audience. So but that means also that we have to that's a very clear choice that we make less films with more money per film. So there's more time, more freedom also for filmmakers to take more time in the different stages of filmmaking, in the development, production, post-production. So we saw that we have so many films, we should make a little less films, but give them more money. Okay. So.
Thank you. I would like now to move on to the infamous cinema experience and to talk it a little bit more practically speaking. So I have a question to Christophe and Marlena. What does it mean exactly improving the cinema experience?
First of all, I will answer this question in a minute. But you mentioned before there are zones in Europe where we have cinema desert, and we have to think about programs, about initiatives to encourage exhibitors to invest in new capacity. And here's a lack. We have a perfect Creative Europe program, and as we are distributors as well, I know we are beneficiaries of the automatic support. We could increase, by the way, the number of movies from 12 a little bit up, maybe, to get more movies in circulation, but that's another story. And Europa Cinema certainly is important, but it's limited. And if we could consider additional initiatives for incentives to invest in infrastructure, certainly not in real estate, but in the infrastructure, in projection systems, in seating and so on, it could help to grow the number of screens in zones where we have a lack. That could be discussed separately. So, cinema experience. Certainly, as I said before, quality is very important, and currently we have two main words, eventization and premiumization. And eventization is a very broad thing. We have national cinema days, we have also initiatives from chains, we have initiatives from single exhibitors to bring the audiences in. And it's not only about the pricing, it's also about the happenings. It's about a family day where you have walking characters, where you have the selfie moments for the kids, for the families, where you have face painting, and people are happy when they got purple if characters are coming, like now. So that's very important, and that's a part of the additional experience, of the enhancement, and of pointing out that out-of-home culture, out-of-home entertainment is fun, and it's a high-value time. And the other thing, premiumization, this is something which is also important. We are searching for comfort, we are searching for our own sphere for a little bit more privacy maybe, and that kind of premiumization. And I'm not talking of luxury, I'm talking of just more comfort. People are asking this, and in our market research, these are the answers. People do not want to sit on 50-centimeter seats. They want to have double armrests. They want to have more room for themselves. And all the other things which are very important to be maintained, very expensive to be refurbished and invested, these are the things which are taken for granted from the audiences. Excellent projection, excellent sound, object-based sound like Dolby Atmos in big auditoriums. But that's standard, and that's a big investment necessity the exhibitors have to bear, and we are responsible for that.
Marlena, do you have the same definition? An additional question, do the art house cinemas have the resources to invest in such improvement of the cinema experience?
Yes, I can totally agree with Christoph. And I think after pandemic we realized that nothing lasts forever. So right now we are living in the world that we have a lot of entertainment, we can travel, we can do a lot of things, and we have to fight for the time of our audience. And what was changing, what's changed during the pandemic is the needs of our audience. Right now they need something something unusual in the cinema experience, but we have two types of experience in the cinema. Like big screen, fantastic sound and screen in the multiplexes, Top Gun, Dune and so on. And the other type of experience is to meeting people and to talk, to have discussion, to share the emotion, to develop yourself. And this is really important for art house cinemas. It's nothing new, as I mentioned it before, because we did that before, but right now we need to do even more, especially when we live in the time when we have a lot of films. We have overproduction. For example, in Poland, we have like 5 or 7 premiere per week. It's a lot. In my association is right now 250 cinemas, and most of them are one-screen cinemas. So for the cinema, it's a huge challenge to pick the right films, to create the program for the audience, especially if you are the small one-room cinema in the small town. That's why often they decide at the last moment what they will screen. And that's what we are doing in my association last 1.5 years, is the bigger cooperation with the distributors. I mean, we created some kind of hub, and we created the situation that 5 or 10% of the P&A of the film, especially we are talking about the art house films, independent films with distribution for the small distribution, they give us, and we create the events in our cinemas. It's very important. Thanks to that, we can do more events. I mean, the meetings, the workshops, the presentation in our cinemas, and this have a great role, and we see that the number of audience is growing on this kind of special screenings. Of course, it's a lot of work, but as we mentioned, right now we don't have a huge subsidies from the government of Polish Film Institute or so on, so we have to help our cinemas in a different way. So right now, when we have also the situation that the promotion of the films is changing because we don't have newspapers and so on. We have to find the new way to promote the films. And for me, it's the great idea to put together distributors and the exhibitors to create the special events for the audience. And it's like a win-win situation, because cinema don't have special money for creating this kind of special events, and thanks to this cooperation have right now, and the distributor is also happy because the number of viewers growing, and of course he has the place in the one room screen. So this is one of the solutions.
Thank you. Still talking about innovation, my last question for this session will go to you, Lucia. You have been supporting innovation experiments in cinemas with the Commission. Some highlights, some projects specifically interesting that you can share with us.
Yes, but allow me to reply to Christoph first, because I think I owe you an explanation. The purpose of the media program is not to help with any sort of infrastructure of equipment. We support content, production, distribution, the whole value chain, and innovation in business models and in audience engagement. There are other European programs that are there for that. Structural funds, cohesion policy, and recovery and resilience funds. And they are not being used. But here the responsibility doesn't lie in the Commission, it's in the Member States. So please go and talk to the national and regional administrations, because these are the ones that has the responsibility to decide on the use of that funding. And the recovery funds could have been used to really refurbish things digitally and making them greener as well. So again, I'm passing back the message to you before I reply to your question. Indeed, we have been experimenting a lot of innovations. Back in 2021 already, we did a pilot project that was called Cinemas and Innovation Hubs, and we're really very positively surprised by the wealth of innovation. So then we discussed with Europa Cinema, and I want to say that the budget of Europa Cinema was increased by 50% in the context of COVID. And also they realized that there was really an appetite for innovation, maybe by necessity, out of the COVID crisis, to start, testing new approaches. And they came up with this wonderful idea, which is called Collaborate to Innovate. It's within the Europa Cinemas grant, 1.5 million euros that are implemented on a completely bottom-up basis. So the cinemas will make proposals to Europa Cinema based on a number of criteria, notably innovation, collaboration, and sustainability, and projects are selected on this basis. And you see really that the projects correspond to the wide variety of situations that we mentioned. I just would like to mention one, because I think it's a beautiful example of European collaboration, and Sandra knows it very well, is what we call the Cineville. That started in the Netherlands, as you know, is this pass that allow you to go for a fixed price to as many screenings as you want on a monthly basis. And it was working so well in the Netherlands that as part of Collaborate to Innovate, the project was tested in Belgium. And it has been a huge success. And from Belgium, then Austria, Germany, and Sweden now are really testing this project. They don't need to start reinventing the wheel with the technology. They know from others about the do's and don'ts. So they are building on something that already exists. And I would like to finish that for me, this is a wonderful example of European collaboration. I would encourage as many people, as many countries as possible to test it. And one dream, maybe for the future, will be to have a European pass so that people could easily move from, and watch wonderful European cinemas with the same card all over Europe.
Now, with that, we will conclude the first session of the panel. So you stay on the stage, I go, and I give the floor to Susanna. But thanks a lot. It was really, really rich. Thanks a lot.
we are now changing the team slightly, and we change, as already announced, direction. We're looking into regulation and support measures. And we'll do that in a way with the same approach. First, we'll have an introduction so that you can place all the topics a little bit along the lines, and then we'll have another round of discussion with our panelists who are multifunctional and able to look at everything from all sides, and we're very grateful for that. So I'd like to introduce Maria Capello, the head of Department for Legal Information, who will be the moderator of that second part, and Sophie Vallet, her deputy, who will give you another presentation.
Good morning, everyone. So let's take one step back in history. 1894 is the year of the opening of one of the first cinemas, the Kinetoscope Parlor in New York City. By then, for 25 cents, you could watch a short film through an individual peephole. Today, the cinematic experience has little in common with the Nickelodeon format of the 90s. We've moved from analog to digital cinema. Our theaters are now equipped with new immersive technologies, and big data is reshaping strategies of marketing towards the audience. But with these evolutions come also new challenges. Retaining audiences, attracting new publics in the face of on-demand consumption, as we have seen, modernizing infrastructure to keep up with technological upgrades and embrace sustainability. So these are some of the challenges that were mentioned now and that the exhibition sector faces today. Despite this evolution, going to the cinema remains more than ever a collective experience that creates social bonds, and this was also mentioned in the first panel. So public authorities at national level are aware of this role of cinemas for promoting cultural diversity, but also as an economic sector that generates income for the economy and for films. And all countries intervene to a greater or lesser extent through regulation and support measures. They intervene at the market level through competition rules, but also to guarantee cultural and social policy objectives through special regulatory and policy tools. And we will have some examples of these tools at national levels. Territoriality also plays an important role in film exploitation in Europe. It is at the heart of the release window systems and of the theatrical exclusive window. So we will see how it works in Europe in terms of theatrical window. But public intervention is not only about rules and obligation, it means also bringing support to the sector through state aid. So we'll take a quick look of different national approaches as far as the exhibition sector is concerned. But let's start first with the tools and the market. So competition rules apply to the film sector as to any other sectors. Through these rules, the national competition authorities grant protection to the weakest operators against dominant position or concerted practices, and this concerns exhibitors and distributors alike. But competition alone is not enough in many cases to reach other objectives such as a diversified supply of film or to prevent against concentration. Yet cultural diversity is an objective which is broadly involve media freedom of expression, pluralism and opinion, and it is an area where the public authorities have also an intervention. So regulation in the sector can take place before ex ante through legislation. It can take place also through the film fund rules or industry agreement mandated by law. And it can take place also ex post, for example, through a cinema ombudsman or a dispute settlement decision. At national level, a wide variety of tools are put in place. So this concerns in most countries the rules and procedures for cinema operations, going from building permits, renovation authorization, different permits for public screening, safety permits, or tax registration obligation like any other companies. We find also sometimes in the law some limits and controls regarding the relationship between distributors and exhibitors, and it can concern, for example, the range of negotiation of the rental fee or box office revenue monitoring, or even the contract itself. The law can say the contract must be in written or orally or whatever. Other types of intervention of the states concern the diversity in programming in some country. We have, for example, in Spain, a screen quota of 25% of works of Europe that must be screened by cinema. But also we find other approaches like voluntary commitments by exhibitors that must be approved by the film agency, like, for example, in France. However, in most countries that have this kind of approach towards a diverse film offer, relate these programming with the incentives. So it can be, for example, like in Switzerland, a bonus that exhibitors receive, a diversity bonus when they screen a certain amount of diverse films. We find also in many countries an action on the price of the tickets towards a certain audience. So this concerns, for example, young people, students, seniors, or also persons with disabilities. These can be actions backed by the state. In some countries, it is in the law, or it can be also commercial initiatives by exhibitors, sometimes in collaboration with companies like insurance or banks, and sometimes with the public authority itself. Finally, we found also an increasing trend in many countries to have national cinema days, which can take various forms. It can be one day or it can be a week of event, but the idea is to boost cinema attendance by creating an excitement around the big screen experience. And the results seems to be quite positive. Okay, another key principle of cinema exhibition is territoriality and this theatrical exclusive window. This system is anchored in a broader system of the release window system, and we will see now how it works. So in a nutshell, the release window system refers to a model of film exploitation according to which holdback periods are defined between before a film can be released in each of the subsequent channels. So it starts with the release of the film in theaters, and it is usually followed by retail, TVD and TVOD and DVD, rental TVOD and DVD, pay TV, SVOD, and free TV, sometimes the other way around. The thing is that in Europe, this system is organized differently among the countries. In some countries, it is set in the law, like, for example, in France or in Bulgaria. It can be also the results of industry agreements, like in Spain, for example, or in Denmark. And it can be also through film fund rules as a criteria to access funding. And we can see in this map that the first window in cinema, although it's about 3 to 4 months, there are some variation also in terms of the length and how it is organized. But the intervention of the state in the sector is not limited to regulation and rules. It also concerns public support through a range of state aid. So, public support in the cinema, sorry, I just missed, yeah. This ability of the state to support their film sector has a long history that started actually with the creation of the first film agencies, and it became a right for the state in 2005 with the UNESCO Convention on Cultural Diversity, after a long history of cultural exception that became cultural diversity, and it all started with the trade negotiation in the 90s. But today, states are entitled to support their cultural industries, and the film policy is part of it. So, national approaches to public support is diversified also in Europe, and we can see that as far as the exhibition sector is concerned, there are different approaches. In most cases, the support goes primarily to production, but there is also many states that give support to the exhibition sector. The support can be automatic and selective, or selective only. It can target the equipment, the modernization or the digitalization of theaters. It can be national, or it can be granted at local level. Some cases it's reserved to nationally funded cinemas or to all cinemas. It can be, for example, reduction of the VAT rate for cinemas in some countries. We find also many countries giving a specific support to art house cinemas, and this is usually linked with the diversity in the programming of the cinema, reserved to local films or European films or independent high-quality films, and it can be also given at national or local level. We find also a support which is very relevant also for the exhibition sector, which is the support to international distribution. For example, in Italy, it takes the form of tax credits with priority on international distribution and independent distributors, and an additional support to cover distribution costs in regions of linguistic minorities produced or films produced in minority languages. We find also in some countries a support for local films distributed abroad. So this is the case in Finland, for example, and Norway, in Spain, in the UK, or in Germany. Many countries also give us support for audiences and festivals, and here we find very nice approaches, interesting approaches, like in the UK, which has created like research and development on audience monitoring, creating some film hubs to share also best practices between cinema exhibitors. And some countries also put a lot of attention on the organization of festivals and events, or educational programs towards youngsters. Lastly, we find also some countries which are revising their cinema laws and try to have a more global approach, englobing digitalization, diversity, sustainability, and also accessibility. So these approaches at national level are complemented at supranational level with media and Europa Cinema that was mentioned earlier. So between the peephole of the kinetoscope parlor to the immersive experience of today, there is little in common, but cinema continues to play a strategic role, and it is time to now discuss how these tools and policy are functioning in practice. I wanted to inform you that the European Audiovisual Observatory has just published 2 days ago a report on cinema exhibition, on regulation and public policies, with the support of UNIC and FIAD, and thank you to them, and wish you a good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, and welcome everyone to this second part of the conference today on the future role of theatrical exploitation in Europe. We have seen that there is a variety of tools, support measures at European level, national level, and in the 40 minutes, let's say, that we have left now today for the conference, the idea is to go through 2 rounds. We will first look at the tools, and then we will look at public support measures. So starting with the tools, I would like to focus on 2 main objectives. The first one is how to enhance the diversity of film programming in cinemas, and the second one is how to entice the audiences to go back to the cinemas after the pandemic and the crisis that we have experienced. And I would like to start with the two exhibitors that we have here today, that is Christophe and Marlena. And I would like to start with Christophe. Represent Cineplex. I don't know if everyone knows, but it's a big group with nearly 70 cinemas in 12 different countries. And people might think that, okay, a multiplex is where you go and watch blockbusters, eat popcorn, but maybe it's not like that, is it? I would like to get your view on that, and also to tell us a bit your view on what is the relationship between art house films and commercial films in multiplexes. Is there a real dichotomy between the two? And which tools are the best fit in order to ensure a diverse offering in cinemas? Christophe.
Thank you. Oof, only in 3 minutes. First of all, I'm totally against this black and white, the good art houses and the bad multiplexes. And if you look back 30 years, maybe, yes. The first big boxes, zero architecture in ugly suburbs of big cities, okay, not that nice. But times have changed, and we have now well-refurbished boxes, but we have newly developed nice architectural multiplexes, and we have big chains, and we have single entrepreneurs who invest in this infrastructure. And these new times are really different, and in such cinemas everything can be watched, and certainly there is a cross stimulation between commercial movies and art movies. And if you take an example, you go out and watch, let's say, after the pandemic, the biggest title, Top Gun Maverick. So you had people in who love Tom Cruise. You had people in who watched the first Top Gun 30 years ago. You had people in who just like fighter jets flying around. And then people watch other trailers, see other posters and so on, and are inspired by this. So, and now, if I look at our theaters in Austria, for instance, we have a market share of about 50% in tickets. And I looked at some titles, for instance, Poor Things. With Poor Things, we had an overall market share of nearly 30%. For challengers now, okay, it's more crossover, we have a market share of nearly 45%. But also Banshees, with Banshees we had more than 20% market share of the whole performance of the movie. So multiplexes contribute, and especially multiplexes in smaller cities, smaller multiplexes, 6-screen cinemas in countryside cities, they play an important role. They are here, they are the local supplier for entertainment and for culture, for Top Gun and for Perfect Days, for Tom Cruise and for Lasse Hallström. So that's very important. In many cities there are no art house cinemas, and maybe due to real estate developments there might be a 4-screen or a 5-screen chain cinema, but they play another role. And here is our chance for new audiences, for the diversity of programming. And if we get incentives, not rules, not intervention, but if we get incentives as exhibitors, parallel and maybe beside Europa Cinema, we could increase the proportion of European and local movies in the programming.
Thanks, Christophe. So if I understand well, it's a sort of mutual benefit, let's say, that you see between art house and commercial films in multiplexes. But now let's check if this corresponds also to the view of Malena. You represent the Art House Cinema Exhibition Association in Poland. So do you also witness a positive coexistence between commercial and art house programming? And how do you see the tools that can be used in order to attract the audiences, well, let's say to art house cinemas, because that is your field in particular? How do you see it, Marlena?
I think the border between art house cinemas and multiplexes before pandemic was very clear, and right now it's changing. Even in Poland, of course, the multiplexes try to screen maybe not a lot, but some of the art house films. And art house cinemas try to release blockbusters as well, because it's really important to understand that, for example, art house cinemas which are private, totally private, they need money just to exist. And if we don't have a lot of subsidies, we have to find another solution. So the blockbusters are, for example, one of this kind of solution. And in our association, we have this rule that art house cinema has to play at least 40% of art house films. And the rest is like their decision, if they will play another art house films or something more commercial. But generally, I think this difference between art house cinemas and the multiplexes are not bad because we have different goals. Multiplexes is the entertainment places with the popcorn and so on, and we create like a as I mentioned before, the safe space and the community, and we are more like a local cinemas. A lot of our cinemas are small, one room with maybe 100 seats or even less, and this those cinemas are like a neighborhood cinemas, so it's like a cultural center. And what we are doing to invite people, it's, as I mentioned, it's a lot of workshops, meeting with the crew, meeting with the specialists in some topics, and also, we are the part of the European Art House Cinema Day or National Cinema Day. It's really important to do that, and this is something different. Multiplexes are not doing that.
But maybe some, I think, Christophe, you are. I see.
In Poland.
He's disagreeing. No,
in
not
Poland.
in Poland. But
Yes.
just to sum up, because I'm conscious of time as well, so I would like to give everyone the room. Blockbusters in art house cinemas as a means of survival, let's say, and for you, art house films in the Cineplex in the multiplex is a way of blending, let's say, cultures. So two different scopes, but maybe they can survive. We will get back to those
and
later.
bringing additional audiences, of course.
So diversifying
and there
audiences.
Is something in between the very far end of art house and the very far end of multiplexes, and the in-between, as I tried to explain, these miniplexes in the countryside. This is very important. Just one sentence. We introduced the Kulturkino Montag, Cultural Cinema Monday. Every second Monday we bring a special movie, and we work with local politicians, and they bring other groups of people in. It's one show every second week in a multiplex. Just as an example.
But you don't do electoral campaign, do you? Bring in politicians? No. Very good.
Yes, but one sentence. But from the other side, Barbie and Oppenheimer was like a lifesaver for a lot of cinemas, not only in Poland, I think, in Europe generally. And we have to remember that we need also those kind of films just to, earn more money just to survive.
Yeah, no, that message was clear. So the incentive side is noted. I want now to move to another tool, and here I look at Katarina and Anastasia, our distributors here today, and I would like to look at the period of theatrical exclusivity and release windows. They are a sort of a sacred milestone for the sector. They are undisputed in Europe. And Katarina, you represent in particular one of the biggest, maybe the biggest distributor in Finland, Nordisk Film. I was wondering, what is in your view the role of the theatrical exclusive window for film exploitation today? There's lots of competition coming from all sides. We have talked about eventization, privatization, but also the SOFA, even to get people out, as you mentioned earlier. So which are the tools that could boost this part of the sector, the distribution?
Yes, twofold question. But, well, definitely, when you have a strong story, that is made for the big screen, and you can recognize that there's an audience for that story. So definitely, of course, the theatrical window is extremely important. It creates the presence in the marketplace. It actually also enhances the revenue down the line in the subsequent windows. And hearing my colleagues from the exhibitor side, of course, it's also the window where we as distributors, we really want to work with the exhibitors in order to recognize the audience that they have in their, complex, and how do we drive the audience to that complex. So definitely very important. But about the tools in boosting the theatrical release, I have to then bring the remind of the sadder fact that we are facing here is, of course, according to MediaVision research 23, it showed that in my home country alone, in Finland, there are 190,000 households who use illegal IPTV, and over 700,000 people between 15 to 74 years, they have downloaded illegal content within past month. And this is not Finnish problem, this is a European-wide problem. And this is eating away millions and millions of euros at the moment of investments that we have made as distributors, exhibitors. So we need stronger legislation to stop this criminality, definitely. So that is very important way to actually help us to do our work better and protect our investments.
So legislation to fight piracy?
Yes.
And maybe also to educate the younger generation? I don't know.
Both, of course. We need positive push and negative stops, and that is one of the things that we really need to work together with.
I like
Europe.
positive push and negative stops. That says it all in a nutshell. I think it says very well. So moving from Finland to Italy, I was just now windows, they tend to be a bit shorter. That's clearly the effect of the pressure that is made by SVODs. There is this urge also maybe to shorten the risk of piracy. That might also be a countermeasure that is being put in place spontaneously. But what is, on your view, the impact on the less commercial films? Maybe piracy is not the biggest issue there, no? But there might be other problems that make it difficult to bring the audiences connect to the films. And what is, in your view, the magic tool that could be used here?
I don't know the magic tool, but I think that, yes, as you said, for less commercial titles, the piracy problem is less strong. I mean, it's less important. It's still, it has to be done something also in Italy, because it is a problem also in Italy. In terms of windows, also in Italy, no, the situation has changed after the pandemic. The thing is that we should not, in my opinion, be so worried about platform. I mean, we should try to work together to try to support. There are two different tools of the same industry, so we should try a way to support each other, considering that less commercial movies have, alas, often a very short life in cinemas. So we cannot think that the way to protect them are so long windows. So for me, we should cooperate strongly with the platforms to try to find measures to somehow support each other instead of struggling or being afraid, because in the future it also goes in that direction. It's important in any case to preserve the theatrical experience. For us as a distributor, theatrical experience is still absolutely most important, so we should do whatever needed to preserve this theatrical experience, also in terms of revenues, because platforms don't give any, I mean, in our country, don't give any important revenue. It's still don't even with the home video of the past. So this is also something that we should take into consideration. Theatrical is, it has to be the most important part. but still the future is also there. So we should try really to find a way. I don't know the tool. Of course, the working together with the exhibitors is still one of the most important part, in my opinion.
Yeah. I saw you were nodding, Katarina, about the collaboration with the platforms. Do you see that there is no time for a battle, theater and VOD, or how does it work in Finland with the window?
In Finland, I think we are, as you saw the presentation, we are working with good contractions, and I think the collaboration is working well. You know, we also see the benefits of the subsequent windows for the financing of the films. So we need to kind of row the boat to the same direction.
Yeah. So financing, well, this leads me to the film funds, the money bags. So Sandra, you represent the Dutch Film Fund here today, and I understand that also in the Netherlands the windows are an issue. It's important for many of the films that you finance, since there is a big pressure from SVODs for shorter theatrical exclusivity. But in the Netherlands there are also other initiatives that are flying very well. Cineville is one of them. Basically, all you can watch cinema subscription, no? That you can benefit from. And how you are relatively new to the Dutch Film Fund, but I think you can already take stock of this experience. How are these tools working?
Okay, the tool Cineville was just introduced by Lucia. Thank you for that. And actually, I think the founder of Cineville is in the room.
Raise your hand, Cineville founder.
Someone's still here, or he's already going and Cineville, probably. Good idea. So Cineville indeed is a success story. It's creating a community. So you become a member, you go to the cinema 2 or 3 times a month. You pay 20 euros per month. Cineville pays back to the theaters the amount of a cinema ticket. And it's huge. It's also it was very instrumental for the success of the Dutch art houses, I think. And they create communities, and it's not only anymore in the Netherlands, it's now also in other countries. So that's very successful. I also want to address what you were saying about the competition between with the windows and the streamers. I think we live in a new reality, and we have to work together. And I think because it's very important also for the visibility of our local, national, European films, to work together with the streamers. And in the future, and the future is here now, I think we should work towards a multi-platform strategy. So we should have windows for theatrical, because I still believe that the silver screen is the best way to enjoy cinema. But then we should look at more measured sizes of windows, because a documentary perhaps has a shorter window in theaters than a feature film. So you can block and say, well, we need 3 months in this, exclusivity in the theater. For some films, that's far too long.
But do you think that this should be somehow harmonized across Europe?
I think it's let's first start on a national level.
It's a good idea.
But I think, yes, indeed, also on a European level, but on a national level, in the Netherlands, we now have an investment obligation for streamers to invest in local content, and that brings us together. So we have to talk about how long do we want to have the films in the theaters, when do they go on the streamers or on public television. So it's a strategy, and you have to bring all the financiers at the table, also the producers and the filmmakers, and you have to create new set of rules and regulations.
Yeah, no, it's a multi-stakeholder operation, that's clear. It's a quite complex one. Okay, noted. I guess Lucia is also taking notes. And this leads me to you. As a representative of the European Commission, you certainly have managed to follow very closely the issue of how to reach back to the audiences. It's something that I know is dear to your heart. And all these initiatives, some work well, some less well, but I guess we have examples of positive practices that we can identify. And I was wondering which initiatives you think can be the most successful ones to meet the expectations of the European audiences with regard to the cinematic experience.
Well, indeed, from the European Commission, from many years already, we think that of course, content is super important, but the content has to reach an audience. And for a while, it was a bit the orphan child, and it's good that we are all collectively gathering more and more information and sharing it. Italy is a good example, with these data are shared with the whole community to understand where the audiences are. And I really concur with what has been said by many of you. I think we could sum up in two kind of sentences. The first one is that you need to engage with your audiences, but it's no magic recipe, and certainly not from Brussels, because you are better positioned to know how to engage, whether your audience is a young audience, is a family audience, is a teenager audience, is a senior audience, and then you adapt your strategies to engage with that particular segment. So it's very difficult to say, this is the way forward. No. We know that it's this intimate connection that is going actually to contribute to the success. And the second element, and by the way, through Europa Cinema, we have been promoting this kind of European Cinema Nights. It's an initiative we launched 6 years ago, and now there are more than almost 90 cinemas engaged during a week in December to create that intimate connections with the audiences. So engage is important. The second one for us is know your audience. And this boils down to data analytics, to using all the wealth of information we have today. And here I would say, if you know your audiences, maybe cinema is the best way to engage with them, but for certain type of content, maybe not. Maybe not. There are better ways to engage with your audience. I'm not by no means undermining the importance, but I think what should determine the best distribution strategies, as you said, is where is your audience and where can I find it? Maybe I need a very short cinema window and then I need to find other ways, but I think if we engage and we know the audiences immediately, that is the basis for a really successful distribution and exhibition strategies.
Yeah, that's indeed a good point. So maybe also to be a bit more flexible with regard to the different kinds of contents, if I understand your message.
It's flexibility because of the wide diversity of situations that I will really emphasize this. So trying to regulate too much or to dictate too much or to impose something that can cater for all these different realities, audience-wise, in terms of cinema infrastructures, in terms of the content that is produced, I think maybe could be counterproductive.
I see many nodding heads, so I think this was a message that was well received. So first round over, let's now move to a second topic, which is state aid, money. That is something we need. It's notorious that cinema is a subsidized sector in all over Europe, but that happens in different ways and on different stages of the value chain. And the big discussion is where to strike the balance between money that goes to production and money that goes to exhibition and distribution. We are not going to discuss here now if we have too many films, etc. We are going to focus on the money that goes to exhibition and distribution. And I would like to stay with you, Sandra, starting with your viewpoint from the Film Fund, where you certainly have had this discussion. And there are many tools, fiscal incentives, investment obligations, money that goes to production. How do you see the balance? Is there a need for a shift towards exhibition and distribution? How can this be best boosted?
Well, I think that in the presentation we had lots of tools that were given already, and I think in the Netherlands we tick almost all the boxes of support that we do. So we support art house theaters by financing their digital equipment. We support festivals. We support regional film hubs, talent development, film education, film literacy. But I think the main thing is also, so I agree with you, we should invest more in distribution and exhibition, but that it starts at the beginning. So if you start making films that you already think in the first, that's what you were saying just before, that you immediately think of the audience and where to show the film and for who to make the film. So I don't think of distribution and exhibition if the film is ready. You think about it before you even start writing the script, almost.
So better planning.
Well, it's not only better planning, it's knowing your audience, it's engaging with your audience, And in that sense, it would be nice if we were talking about data, that also the streaming platforms are sharing their data and information with us. So, but I think it starts at the very beginning of making a film. So not distribution and exhibition of cinema is not something that starts after the premiere. It starts at the beginning. I think that's very important.
So when you already start to produce, even the development stage, then you already have...
But I think in many countries on the national level, we have all these support in place on national level. And of course, we are very happy, again, I have to say this again, with Creative Europe and Europa Cinema and the media program to support all these initiatives on a European level, to support the cultural diversity of European cinema. And if that's not there, then we would be really in, I don't know, say, well, this.
Well, big compliment to the European Commission. But let's now check this on the ground. I would like to go back to our exhibitors, and that is to Marlena and Christophe. What would you think of being the best focus for public support when it comes to the perspective of exhibitors? So there are many tools. The objective is we need to attract the audiences to the cinemas, but it could also be we need to work on giving visibility to the films. It could be we need to work on the international distribution, or even on the promotion. You mentioned a lot on promotion, on the trailers even. That's also something that is costful. There might be initiatives coming from the states, other from the industry. How does this cooperation work? Marlena, you want to start, and then you follow, Christophe?
Yeah, I can start. Thank you. Yes, we have a lot of tools on national or even European level to get the money for the events, but I think what we need is more support for the cinemas as a place. I mean, I think about the infrastructure, because also, what is also really important for the audience is not only the content, but also the place when they can watch the film. So it has to be maybe not cozy, but generally in good condition. And for example, in Poland, we do have a problem with funding the money for infrastructure and so on. So this is a huge problem for us. But also I think that we need a support for the training of cinema managers. In the world when for example, the social media are changing very fast, and the way of promotion films is changing very fast. We need to create the space for our exhibitors to develop their possibility to promote those films on the cinema level. So, for example, we do have like a art house cinema training, which the SICA is doing in Berlin, but it's one, and we have like Europa Cinemas labs during some festivals, but generally we don't have some kind of training for exhibitors, which might help to the distributors promote the films on the really basic cinema level. And the third thing, which is really also important, to support more the promotion of non-commercial films on the local level. It's also really important, because blockbusters like Top Gun or Duna, they have global promotion, and their visibility is really amazing, but we have a lot of amazing European films which don't have as much money for the promotion, especially on the national level.
Yeah, that sounds clear, because of course engage audiences, but if the audience doesn't know about the existence of a film, then it will be very difficult indeed.
Exactly. So the one ecosystem is like
yeah, absolutely. So from Poland to Austria and actually to 11 more countries, how is your experience on this, Christophe?
Well, I just want to add here, here comes the important role of the exhibitors, the small titles outside of the big cities. When you go to a smaller mountain valley city of 7,000 people inhabitants, here the exhibitor does the promotion of the movie and not the distributor, because the distributor is, small wonder, not familiar with all these local things. And here cinemas need the support for promoting special content, for promoting cultural important movies. And promoting does not only mean spending advertising and media, it means also to create events in the cinemas. It can be more commercial, it can be more family, it can be also more discussions or our cultural Monday or whatever. And if we could get support here as an exhibitor, it would be very helpful. I mentioned earlier I'm not a fan of regulations, I'm a fan of incentives. And Europa Cinema's program is the perfect example how it works. You program a percentage of European non-national movies and you get money. It's more, but that's to the point. And, but it's limited to the cinemas who are part of the network, and not every cinema can deliver that high proportion of European programming. But if we want to go to this, however, interim stage of mini-plexes, which cover also art movies or local, more intense local content, etc. Here we could get benefits for showing these titles, like a programming bonus. And then the clear decision of an exhibitor would be in the, let's say, 16th week of Planet of the Apes to eliminate it from the program and to take the risk of showing a smaller title. Maybe the auditorium stays empty, but maybe in the 16th week of Planet of the Apes, the auditorium is also empty. So if I get the benefit, I would step into this earlier. And here, I think, is a lot of room for creating more diversity in programming when you take a little bit out of the risk of the exhibitor who is not in the basis subsidized by state institutions, who is a private one and who has to survive economically. I think that this would be very important.
So if I can summarize, it's room for collaboration between industry and regulation. No, that's a bit the message, to incentivize.
In two ways, and national institutions for national movies and European institutions for cross-European non-national titles.
Very clear. I think that was another message for the European Commission. But I think Europa Cinema appears universally appreciated. I think as an example that works well. But it's not the only one. So now let me move back to our distributors here today, Anastasia and Katarina, and wanted to look at the support measures and which are the most efficient in your view for to boost theatrical exploitation, if it's direct subsidies to the cinemas or tax credits, for example, or automatic selective support, but it can also be schemes that are more geared towards the exhibition and distribution sector, or even film literacy, fight against piracy, you mentioned it already, or renovation of the theaters. It's clear that you need to offer an experience that is worth abandoning the comfort zone of the sofa. So Anastasia, I'll start with you, and then Katarina, you can follow up.
I think really the incentives to cinemas is very, very important, in the sense that if they have, in Italy there is actually the so-called Premio Cinema d'Essai, meaning that some art house cinema got at the end of the year a prize if they program a certain, depending, it's an automatic depending on the admissions of a certain kind of movies. So this is something absolutely important. I agree that one of the biggest problem we have is the accessibility to the cinemas. So if we find more cinemas that want to program our titles, that's the most important thing, and start promoting together in advance, again, in advance, with long advance. So this is very important, and also I think it's very important the renovation to try, because your situation is great. We are close to, a bit closer to the Polish situation in terms of cinemas. There are a lot of new cinemas, not enough, especially out of the big cities. Cinemas are still like in the 80s, so there are places not where people don't want to gather to meet each other. It's not a socializing place. It's really one screening room, a bit ugly. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to go there. And so there's a lot of work to do in that direction. But coming back to us, to this distribution, which is closer, of course. For us, I'm not saying that because Laura is here, but without Creative Europe, a company like ours, and there are more than ones in Italy, which are independent art house distributors that are not focused on national movies, because we are not focused on national movies. Without the help of Creative Europe, we couldn't have done we couldn't have grown so much in these last 10 years, because we don't have any support, national support for to distribute international European movies. Not at all. Tax credit is not for us because it's only for national movies. So we really have. For us, the public support of Creative Europe is essential. I would say a mixture of both automatic and selective films on the move. It's important to preserve a mix of them. Through the automatic, a company, an independent company, can invest more on bigger MGs and acquire bigger titles, and so grow with the passing of times on one side, and on the other can dare to buy beautiful movies like the ones we watch here now these days, and maybe they are not so big like the films, the one that we they apply for films on the move. Maybe they're not sold in so many territories, but still are important to guarantee the diversity of the panorama of the art house cinema. Yep. So, and of course films on the move, because we can share with other independent distributors ideas. We can grow in terms of knowledge of marketing strategies and inventing new tools. So both of them are absolutely very important. Good. Yeah.
From Italy to Finland.
Yes, I try to be brief and say that more money, of course, we need. that is a general message. But jumping back a little bit to the session one, we were looking at the figures, and it was mind-blowing that 144 titles accounted for 80% of the admissions, and top 10 titles were 30% market share. It just underlines the challenge we are facing with a lot of the titles at the moment. They have problems of reaching the audiences. When the media has fragmented, it is more and more difficult to get the message out and reach the audience. And I, of course, when I'm looking at the public support euro, I would like to see where it's the most efficient. And of course, it's needless to say, as a distributor, I think it is very efficient when you use the public support in order support reaching the audiences, that we can actually increase the visibility of those titles in the marketplace and make sure that the people find in the theaters, pay the ticket, and then that circulates, of course, to the whole value chain much more efficiently. And at the moment, of course, when the costs have risen, unfortunately, the public supports have not risen in the same ratio. So that has to be taken in consideration, that we need a raise there, because small countries like Finland, of course, where I come from, and the Nordics and many European countries, it is huge investment from the distributor, acquire the non-national film rights and then distribute it in the country. So we need of course, support, and there are various tools for that, and we are great fans of Media Automatic, which could actually work a little bit more flexibly, but that's another discussion for our territory. But yes, definitely.
So more money to bridging the gap for the losses.
Exactly.
That's also a big message, I understand. And this, we have a few minutes left, and I would like to close with you, Lucia. You've heard a lot, many initiatives coming also from the industry, not only from above. We have also overarching goals such as sustainability, digital transformation, inclusion policies. We have not discussed much about that, but these are always on your mind, I know. So maybe you can touch upon that for the closing and put things into a wider context if you want.
Well, that's a big question for the closure. To wrap up, I think, and again, I agree with many of the things that have said. We are in a moment where things are changing. The distribution business, the exhibition business is changing. In our dialogue, because we discuss a lot with distributors and sales agents and cinemas, we see it. I think there is a growing competition for the kind of successful European titles, the ones you will see here in Cannes on official competition, that before it was kind of taken for granted that those films will go to art house cinemas. Maybe they will be acquired by big streaming platforms these days. So this is changing. And also we see that there are some titles that maybe used to go to kind of multiplexes that are more and more being shown in art house cinemas. So it's becoming, everything is becoming a bit more blurred. And I think we need all together to take into account these different realities and how we adapt our policy support to take into account these new trends. When it comes to public policy, we have been discussing a lot with the industry. This is part of the DNA of the program. We will continue doing it. I think I will welcome similar structured conversations with the film funds. Because, of course, we are all supporting films, but I think it's very difficult today, and all this information is public, but it's very difficult to have a kind of overview of how a film is supported today in Europe by national, by supranational states, from development to exhibition. So I think, because money, unfortunately, at least on the European side, it will be very challenged because of other Ukraine and many other absolutely legitimate priorities. We have to do better with the money we have. And the alignment of national funds, regional funds, and European funds, for me, personally, we believe that should be part of the agenda in the future. So I think that will be in transparency on the one side, and we will learn from each other, because maybe there is no need to reinvent the wheel. If the Netherlands is doing something great as this Cineville, I mean, can we export and others can benefit from that initiative? If the Italians are doing well in really providing data to the community about audiences, can we learn from that and share these experiences with the community? So I think if we do that mutual learning, for me, is key to make best use of the resources we all have. And I will conclude with that.
Thank you. This was a positive message to look for in the future. There will be a new commission. There will be plenty of work to do. So with this, I think we can close the panel discussion. I would like to call our director up to the stage again for a few closing remarks, and I thank you all.
So don't worry, all what I have to say comes from some few notes that I scribbled here, but I do think it is worthwhile just to recall maybe some main themes very quickly, because I think there is one main theme, and it was just mentioned also at the end, and that is called cooperation. And I do think it is really good also that we saw that in the panel, to put the exhibitors and the distributors next to each other. We actually realize that they have a lot to work on commonly, together. And even looking at the exhibitors and the different types, well, they need each other. It was mentioned possibly to survive. I hope it's more to grow. But that is a very good collaboration. And it was said collaborate to innovate. And I think this is also a theme that is going through the whole discussion, that there is a need to adapt not only to the other players that are around, but also to how, as we had suspected before, how the expectations of the consumers have changed. And also, it's important to collaborate in the terms of sharing information, sharing figures, understanding how in the common interest of the audiovisual industry of Europe, how the resources that are available can be best used. In order to do that, you have to start knowing how they are used. I think this was your last point that you mentioned. Then very quickly, we all agree we love the Creative Europe program and the media program and all the support that comes from it. It's essential. But the same program would also love to see you developing the same love on a national level to sum up and complement these efforts so that it becomes a whole. Then two minor small remarks. I thought it was quite interesting when it was said, get them young. I love that. Yes, get them young, but at the same time you have less and less young people. So there is a certain contradiction which I'm really keen to see one day how you solve that, because you really have to be very efficient to get not them young, but the young, it sounds to me. Then I go back to the very beginning because I loved the opening to say, well, one of the major issues after COVID was to get, I quote, get the butt off and out of the house. Well, I want to thank you all because we got you out of bed and into this room. So really, thank you very much for being with us. I want to remind you that the focus, where you find lots of information, you can pick it up there. Pick up more information on the observatory by visiting us at the stand, H1, just around the corner when you get out. And then there was this great moment where I saw in the back, you all held up your mobiles to make pictures of what was on the screens. No worry, get on our website. We will publish those PowerPoints. You haven't missed anything. Thanks again. Come again next year because we will. Bye.